Hello, you have joined the session titled Responding to Dementia-Related Behaviors and Effective Communication Strategies and What We Can Do to Help. Our speaker today is Ann Martinez, and before I go on a little further introducing her, I just want to discuss a few matters to make things run more smoothly. My name is Lisa Hall. I'm a supervisor in the Public Affairs Department at the Bucks County Area Agency on Aging. We want to welcome all of you here today. Thank you for your participation in this really important symposium. We will ask that you keep your microphone muted for the duration of the presentation and your video camera turned off. There will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please use the chat box to submit any questions you may have throughout the duration of the presentation. Each session will be recorded and made available on the Bucks County Community College's YouTube page a couple of weeks following today's symposium. Lastly, in order to receive continuing education credits for today's symposium, you will need to complete the evaluation form by the end of today. That form was sent to you by email and is available on the web page. Okay, our speaker today is Ann Martinez. Ann is a volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association, Delaware Valley Chapter. She has a bachelor's degree in music therapy from Elizabethtown College and a Master of Arts in Psychological Counseling from Monmouth University. Ann is currently the Director of Memory Care at Park Creek Place with Enliven Senior Living. She's a certified dementia practitioner and has dedicated her career to helping residents and families in the dementia process. Ann is passionate about providing education and support to families and caregivers. She seeks creative ways to serve those experiencing symptoms of dementia. Thank you for sharing with us today, Ann.
Thank you. So as was said, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we will pause a couple times for any kind of questions. So welcome. Thank you for attending. This is two parts: understanding and responding to dementia-related behavior and also effective communication strategies. So welcome. Today, we will review some of the more challenging behaviors associated with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias and strategies to use to help address them. As with any good program, we do have some objectives. So by the end of today's program, you will be able to identify common triggers for behaviors associated with dementia, explain the process for assessing and identifying challenging behaviors, list strategies to address some common dementia-related behaviors. Some of the most difficult behaviors for caregivers to understand and address arise in the middle stage of the disease process. Behavioral symptoms can be caused by physical discomfort such as fatigue, hunger, thirst, constipation, full bladder, an uncomfortable room temperature. Behaviors may also be triggered by overstimulation, sadness and loss, or boredom, isolation, or changes in routine or your living situation. Although the causes may be hard to sort out, it can be helpful to take steps outlined in the next few slides to understand and respond to the needs expressed through behaviors. We will present an outline of steps to take, and we will then apply these steps to the most challenging behaviors that caregivers commonly face. Today, we will explore how to understand and address common dementia-related behaviors by using this four-step process: detect and connect, address physical needs first, address emotional needs, and reassess and plan for next time. You're going to hear me say those four things a lot during this presentation.
What was that?
So the first one is detect and connect. The first step in understanding and addressing behaviors is by really
go by the
being
house?
present in his or her reality. This means that you're seeing the world through
No, I did
his
not
or
know
her
that.
But
rather than your
Becky hasn't
own.
been picking her up for the last week because she's been house sitting, and the people
Done
she's house
that way,
sitting,
everyone can
they
come
let
in.
her drive her car, so she's been driving the car.
When
Becky said the last time she spoke to her, we
it
can
was
text yesterday
not
to find
communication.
something. Hey,
You
am
know
I
that
picking you up?
Hello.
Sorry, Anne.
Mary said
I'm going to
no.
interrupt you really
I
quickly.
have
We
a
have some
car.
participants whose
I get
microphones
the
are
car
not muted.
that she'll.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back and start over with this slide. That way I can make sure that you hear it. So again, the first step is that detect and connect. And that's really just by joining the person in his or her reality. This means that you're seeing the world through his or her eyes rather than your own. When we remember that behavior is a form of communication, we know that we could see the world through the eyes of the person with dementia. And if we experienced what they experience in the way that they do, the behavior would make perfect sense to us. It can be a tough one. Since they're the ones with the disease, we can't expect them to accommodate our needs. Instead, we must try to enter their world, connect with them as they are, and do our best to decode what they are expressing. Sometimes we simplify, just can't figure out where the behavior is coming from or what the person is communicating through the behavior. However, it is our job to make every attempt to understand the behavior before intervening so that we know how to help. To understand the behavior, you need to start with some detective work. You just try to determine the trigger for the behavior. Some good questions to ask yourself would be, who was present when the behavior took place? What happened just before the behavior began? What were you doing just before the behavior began? What happened immediately after the behavior took place? Where did the behavior take place? What was the person seeing, hearing, or touching? When does the behavior tend to occur? Is there a particular time of day when it takes place? And how did you react? Connect with the person as you assess the situation. You want to approach the person with respect and treat him or her as you would like to be treated in the same situation. Begin by coming to the person from the front and identify yourself if necessary. Move into his or her physical level and use eye contact and body language to convey a friendly approach. If they're in a wheelchair, you might need to drop down and really just get onto their level. The person will respond much more to your tone and body language than to your words. So it's important to be kind and helpful both in your language and your emotional state. So we want to address physical needs first. So always begin by exploring any needs that may be related to physical pain or a medical condition. Consult a physician to identify causes related to medications or illnesses. Know any signs of injury due to incidents such as a recent fall, and consult the person's physician with any questions or concerns. People with Alzheimer's disease often experience pain from undiagnosed urinary tract infections, compression fractures, arthritis, poorly fitting dentures, indigestion, constipation, or other medical conditions. In addition, behavior may change due to a reaction to a new medication or interaction between several medications. Their needs may not be recognized due to the person's inability to recognize them or talk about his or her symptoms. Know any unusual behaviors or symptoms and report them promptly to the person's doctor to treat or rule out any kind of medical causes of the person's pain. Second, check for physical discomfort due to environmental issues. Things might be, restrictive clothing, lighting problems or glare, or uncomfortable room temperature. Additional common causes of discomfort can include hunger, thirst, the need to stretch or move, the need to use the bathroom, the room being too bright or too dark, too noisy or too quiet, and being in an uncomfortable position or just too much commotion going on. Adjust the environment as necessary to make the person more comfortable. During the physical assessment, continue to connect. Always take it back to that first step of connecting with the person and maintain a calm and soothing presence. This is particularly useful for helping the person with dementia and reduce any agitation or upset related to the pain. Then we're going to address our emotional needs. Think about how the situation feels to the person. This is usually the basis for his or her behavioral reaction. Then focus on those feelings in your response instead of on the facts of the situation. Avoid correcting people if what they say is inaccurate. Remember that you are connecting with them where they are. Telling them that they're wrong will only escalate the situation and convey that you don't understand what is happening. He or she will try harder to convince you, and they may get more upset. Let the person know you are with him or her and that you are safe together. Reinforce that you are there to help and that you will try to make changes to make the person more comfortable. Although you may not understand the exact meaning of the person's message, you can usually identify the feeling behind the behavior. Address the emotion behind the behavior to help the person feel less overwhelmed and alone. This will allow both you to de-escalate the situation together, freeing up energy to direct elsewhere. Even if you are unable to understand what the person is trying to convey, he or she will know that you are trying, which may then reduce frustration and anxiety. Finally, help the person redirect some of the energy that he or she is feeling and expressing through the behavior by leading him or her toward behavior that is more soothing and enjoyable. And last, you want to reassess and plan for next time. The final step in this process is to ask yourself whether your new response helped. Did it help? Did it make a difference? Again, go back to detecting and connecting. Join the person in their reality. How does the situation look now that to the person with dementia? Do you need to explore other potential causes and solutions? If so, what can you do differently? Once you have settled on interventions that are effective, recognize that this type of issue may arise again. Plan to reassess at periodic intervals. Your intervention plan may include how to recognize the signs of the issue returning, how to quickly respond, what to try and in what order, how to assess for the effectiveness of your interventions, what to do if the situation escalates or your interventions are ineffective, and who can help you get the assistance that person needs. These steps can be applied to any behavior experienced by someone with dementia. Now we'll look at how the steps can be applied to some of the most common dementia-related behaviors. Okay. So applying the steps, confusion or suspicion. When someone with Alzheimer's disease is confused, he or she may not recognize familiar people, places, or things. When this confusion is accompanied by suspicion, the person may accuse others of stealing, being unfaithful. It can be very difficult for caregivers when the person cannot remember who that caregiver is or what the caregiver's character is like. We're going to use an example of a woman named Anne, ironically, a woman living with Alzheimer's disease as she begins to experience some confusion and suspicion. And then we'll explore how taking the 4 steps we outlined can help. See if you can apply the steps to this vignette. Here's our vignette. When Anne comes to visit and evening begins, she becomes very suspicious that people are trying to get into her house and are watching her through the big picture windows. She becomes suspicious of her family for not making the people go away and that they all must be in cahoots with each other. Now we're going to look at this. So first is detect and connect as we look at this vignette with this person, Anne, with dementia. So again, try to stay calm as you explore. What is the confused or suspicious behavior? And in this vignette, it's, people are trying to get into the house and they're watching her through the big picture windows. When is it happening? With whom? Where? How does it manifest? You're looking at all those things. Check the environment for potential sources of confusion. So we know in the environment in this vignette, there's the big picture windows. Try to discern whether the person is reacting to something in the present or is instead reacting to something imagined or in the past. If the trigger is current, explore how the person is interpreting the occurrence. For example, if the person has misplaced something, he or she may worry that it has been stolen. You stole my purse type of behaviors. If the trigger is something imagined or in the past, see if you can understand what this situation meant to that person. Step 2 is to address physical issues first. Rule out a medical explanation, infection, low blood sugar, delirium. If the person is experiencing pain, see if you can intervene in a way that makes the person more comfortable. If the person is being given pain medication, consult with his or her doctor right away about possible side effects. In addition, ask about potential interactions between medications and possible side effects. Assess for physical discomfort due to the environment, such as overstimulation or fatigue, things like that. And then modify the environment. If needed, take down mirrors if they seem to be problematic, upgrade lighting if you need to. In the situation described in the vignette, Anne was seeing the family's reflection in the window and interpreted it as strangers looking at them. This was avoided by being sure to close the drapes each evening. So those big picture windows were a big part of the environment in this particular vignette. Respond with a brief and accurate explanation, but avoid arguing. Offer corrections as gentle suggestions or answers. If you escalate your energy level, the person will match that and increase it even further. Show photos and other reminders to trigger the person's recognition of what may have happened. If items are lost and no one can find them, see if you can provide a solution by duplicating them or providing multiples of often used items. Remember that this is about diffusing the situation, not convincing the person of the truth. So again, that's that connecting and detecting. We're meeting them in their reality. We're not convincing them of the truth. We're diffusing the situation. Step 3, then address emotional needs. Briefly, just let the person know that you understand he or she is upset and in what ways. In Anne's situation, we can be specific and say, you seem to be really concerned that people are watching you through the big picture window. That's really scary. And just repeat the message to the person so that he or she begins to calm down. Remember that you have entered the person's reality. Let him or her know that you are here to help and are on his or her side. Agree, acknowledge that you understand, and apologize as needed. For example, I'm so sorry that this is happening, Mom. Let's see what we can do to fix it. Try not to take the person's confusion or behavior personally. This is difficult when you are the target of accusations, but remember that it is the disease causing the accusations, and they are not a reflection of the person's trust in you. And finally, step 4 is reassess and plan for next time. Ask yourself whether your new response helped. Did it work? Do you need to explore other potential causes or solutions? If so, what can you do differently? If you can identify other approaches, try them out and continue to reassess throughout the process. Assume that the person will feel confused or suspicious again in the future and make a plan for addressing it. It's a very common behavior and it's likely to come back. All right, now we're going to look at aggression. Sometimes a person with Alzheimer's can experience aggressive behavior, which may be verbal, physical, or both. There may be a trigger for the behavior that you can identify, but there are times when it may just seem to appear for no reason. So once again, I told you we'd see these 4 things a lot in this presentation, but step 1 is detect and connect. You're identifying an immediate trigger. Is there an immediate trigger for the aggression? Did something frighten them, alarm the person? This may not be a logical response, but rather an automatic reaction to something the person is perceiving. Ask yourself who, what, when, where, and how questions to explore the situation. Gently say the person's name and let him or her know you understand and you are there to help before attempting to intervene. Apologize when it seems that it would help calm the person. You may be apologizing for something you didn't do, but this apology is a reflection of the person's reality, not yours. When we're connecting, we're always meeting them in their own reality. Step 2, address physical issues first. Again, we're always ruling out any kind of medical causes. Some people lash out when they're in pain. Limit or remove any distractions. Screen the environment for any obvious triggers, such as excess noise, changes to the usual schedule, or something the person may have perceived as a threat, and make any adjustments that you can make safely. Be sure to protect everyone involved so no one gets hurt. You may need to ask children to leave the room or ask additional people to provide assistance. Part of your role here is to ensure everyone's safety, so we always want to make sure everyone's safe. Then address the emotional needs. There's our step 3. Screen for emotional triggers. People act aggressively when they perceive danger or they're scared, surprised, alarmed, or in pain. Also be aware that some triggers may not be directly clear to you. There may be a trigger that they're perceiving, but you might have to, again, investigate and see what that trigger is. Focus on the feelings, not the facts. Be positive and reassuring. Let the person know that you are there for him or her and that you will stay to help work the situation out. Step 4, reassess and plan for next time. Once you've settled on interventions that are effective in calming the person and reducing the aggression, recognize that this type of behavior will probably return and may even increase in degree. Make a plan so you can avoid being taken by surprise. Particularly with aggressive behavior, having a plan in place is crucial. Be sure to include what to do if the behavior escalates dramatically. The best way to avoid a difficult or even dangerous situation is to take some steps to ensure safety even before the first incident takes place. Some examples of things that you can do to ensure safety would be alerting neighbors about the person's condition or anticipated behaviors. If you're in a community, it could be really discussing it with your staff. If you have a positive relationship with local first responders, you can also let them know about the person's diagnosis and possible behaviors so that they're prepared in the event of a call. Keep a charged cell phone with you at all times or a way to communicate. You may also need to purchase batteries so that you can change them out promptly when they lose their charge. Get rid of any kind of guns or weapons in the house, even though there is no ammunition. If someone appears to be threatening in public and is carrying a gun, police must assume that the gun is loaded and take appropriate action. So this could really, really be a big deal. Consider a personal security alarm for accessing help when needed. At some point, the person may not be able to be cared for at home. So finding care for people with aggressive behavior is not easy. But you can discuss alternatives in the area and plan ahead, always planning ahead. So when aggression gets dangerous, usually behaviors associated with dementia may be upsetting but are harmless. But this is not always the case. In more rare situations, a person may become dangerous to him or herself or to others. If the person is putting him or herself or other people in danger, it's crucial to get help immediately. You're going to want to call 911 when more help is urgently needed to contain the person's risky behavior. It can feel scary or even silly to be doing this when you are trying to deal with, for example, a family member's behavior, but 911 is meant to keep everyone safe. And it's your right and your responsibility to call when the situation has escalated to a crisis level and people's safety is at risk. Always safety, safety first. When you call 911, make sure you let the dispatcher know that the person has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. This will assure that the right people arrive and don't make the wrong assumptions. When the emergency responders arrive, they will take the person to the local emergency room for assessment. Be sure that everyone involved knows the person's diagnosis so that the appropriate interventions can be made. Next, we're going to talk about repetition. People with Alzheimer's disease may repeat words, questions, or behaviors. This can become really frustrating for those who have the most contact with the person. So we're going to revisit Anne, this little vignette that we were talking about. We're going to take a look at some of her repetitive behavior, and then we'll explore how taking the 4 steps we outlined can help see if we can apply the steps. So here's our vignette. Here's the update. Anne has recently been concerned about an upcoming visit from her daughter. Though her daughter Kate is not scheduled to visit for another 2 weeks, Anne has begun to repeatedly ask her husband Bill when she will arrive. Anne asks several times throughout the day, every day, which has begun to wear on Bill. He finds himself answering impatiently or even ignoring Anne's questions. At the same time, Anne is going to the bathroom more frequently than she ever has before, every 10 to 20 minutes. So there's our vignette. Let's see what we can do. Detect and connect. We're going to stay calm and be patient. That's a tough one for some people, but being patient. Use the who, what, where, when, how assessment to look for triggers and patterns. Accept the behavior rather than fighting to stop it. You will need to work with the behavior rather than against the behavior in order to intervene successfully. So if she's asking these questions and she's concerned about it, she's going to keep asking them. So work with the behavior, not against the behavior. Step 2, address physical issues first. As always, look for pain first, whether the person may be experiencing pain, and make adjustments to safely alleviate the pain. Explore the physical environment for triggers and make any needed changes. Call on medical professionals to assist if the behavior change took place suddenly. The behaviors you see may be a result of an infection, such as a urinary tract infection, another medical issue, or a medication side effect. So if we're looking at Anne, one thing to note is that she is going to the bathroom more frequently than she ever has. So that might be something that we want to look into. Step 3, address emotional needs. Focus on the emotion that the person is exhibiting, whether it is anxiety, frustration, fear, and say something that recognizes that emotional state to help you move to the next step in your intervention. And it seems like you're really anxious about your daughter visiting, that sort of thing. Keep in mind that the emotion behind the behavior may be fueling the repetition. Addressing the emotional need may help diminish repeated questions, statements, or behaviors. So sometimes just recognizing that emotional state is very helpful. Briefly answer the person's questions or address the concerns. So if someone's asking you a question, try to answer it. Repeat the same answer to help the person who may be processing your words slowly and cannot retain them. You might make use of memory aids such as notes, photos, calendars. These help for some people, though not for others. So different brains, different disease process, you're going to need to know what might help somebody. Remember that repetition is a part of the disease. Engage the person in a purposeful activity to redirect his or her focus. Turn the action or behavior being displayed into an activity with a positive focus. It can help to offer a repetitive activity like wiping countertops, folding towels, sorting laundry, things like that. Reassess and plan for next time, our step 4. Finally, ask yourself whether your new response has helped. Is it working, or do you need to explore other potential causes and solutions? If so, what are some things that you could do differently? So in Anne's situation, maybe Bill decided to use a note. You know, Kate's coming to visit on Thursday. And did it work? Did it help? Did it not help? It helps to remember that this is a symptom and it is related to the brain damage that comes with his or her disease progressing. Do what you can to maintain an emotional distance from the behavior. This may mean teaching yourself to adopt a calm stance, using deep breathing, or reciting a meaningful phrase or a prayer. Do what you can to stay centered on the thought that this reflects the disease and not the person. It reflects the disease and not the person. Expect the repetition to happen again. Just like the other behaviors we've talked about, if you anticipate and make a plan for it, then you're prepared to handle it when it does happen. All right, we're going to talk next about wandering. At some point in the course of the disease progress, approximately 60% of people with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia will wander. This behavior may take place without warning, so many families are unprepared for it. So we're going to, again, apply the steps with our wandering. Detect and connect. Assess who, what, when, where, and how to identify possible triggers. His or her reasons for wandering may not be logical to you, but join the person and accept anything that the person says about his or her wandering being goal-directed. Step 2, address physical issues first. As always, look for pain first. Wandering sometimes begins in an attempt to move away from the pain. If the change is sudden, consult the person's doctor for an assessment. Check to see if the person may be reacting to a change or difficulty with something in his or her immediate surroundings. Have there been any changes in the person's patterns of exercise or daily routine lately? Often a person is responding to an unmet need, such as hunger, thirst, having to go to the bathroom, desire to get away from something or someone, desire to go home, go outside, or to just engage with others. Make any changes needed to keep the person safe as you continue your assessment. Step 3, address emotional needs. Is the person feeling bored or understimulated? Name the feelings that you pick up on from the person by saying something like, you seem sad or you look scared. Provide reassurance that he or she is safe and that you are together. Plan ahead of the first wandering incident and put plans in place. If possible, help the person do what they want to do. If they want to go outside, maybe you can just grab your coats and go outside for a little bit with them. Go for a walk or for a drive, or, you know, go into the courtyard, go somewhere if that's what they're looking for. If that's not possible, agree and delay. You know, sure, a walk would be really great, but it's almost lunchtime. Why don't we go out to lunch? Create opportunities for safe wandering, such as, you know, that includes gardening, walkway, a hallway, things like that. Again, if we can make sure we're on mute, please. Thank you.
This is sick.
Suggest doing something.
Symposium. We can work it out.
If we can just make sure we're on mute. Thank you very much. Suggest doing something physical together during times when the person is typically the most restless. Make changes to the person's surroundings that can help reduce the risk of wandering. Some ideas might include putting dark mats in front of the doors to make them look like holes, which then the person might avoid that. Camouflaging doors and door jambs by painting them the same color as the walls. Hanging towels or cloths over doorknobs to disguise them. Provide a structured routine for the day. In doing so, you will offer things for the person to plan on throughout the day and can alleviate any boredom that may trigger wandering behaviors. Consider a community day program or other day structures that provide supervised activities for the person to engage in. This higher level of oversight, activity, and exercise can also provide a way for the person to discharge some energy throughout the day, which can help with sleeping through the night and avoiding that nighttime wandering. All right, we're going to pause for a minute before we move on to communication strategies for any questions that may have ended up in the chat. I had asked. Were there any questions? I'm going to just, let's see, pause my share for a minute. Were there any questions right now related to the behaviors that we just talked about and that 4-step strategy? Okay. If you do have a question, now's a good time. If you want to unmute, you can ask me. Okay, great. Well, then we'll move on to effective communication, which goes hand in hand with our behaviors. Okay, so effective communication strategies. We're going to move on now and kind of change gears about how we talk to people with dementia. So our goals for today is to explain the communication changes that take place throughout the course of the disease, decode the verbal and behavioral messages delivered by someone living with dementia and respond in ways that are helpful to the person, identify strategies to help you connect and communicate at each stage of the disease. So what is communication? Communication is more than just talking and listening. It's also about sending and receiving messages through attitude, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your body language. Communication is a way to express who we are and how we relate to each other. As the brain changes with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia-related progression, people lose the ability to speak and decode language in the usual ways. The better we understand these changes, the better we can connect with people living with Alzheimer's and other dementias throughout the course of the disease process. As Alzheimer's disease and other dementias progress, people lose their ability to communicate their thoughts and feelings through words. They also lose their ability to understand the words that others speak to them. So it's twofold. It's the communication that they're communicating and also the way that others communicate to them. However, they do maintain a sense of self throughout all the stages of the disease. This means that elements of those characteristics that make the person unique will remain a part of him or her throughout the disease. Connecting with the person's self is key to effective communication, staying connected, and giving him or her a voice as the disease progresses. In the early stage of the disease, there may be just a few noticeable changes in the person's ability to communicate with words, or there really may be no recognizable changes at all. Asking the person how he or she would like to be helped with words can be very useful in this stage. Language abilities diminish as the disease progresses, and communication moves from easy conversation to relying on emotions and the 5 senses to connect. As care partners and caregivers, you are the ones who will adjust the ways that you communicate and maintain connections with them throughout the disease. So we're adjusting to the disease process. Remember that the essence of the person continues. Respect the person as the adult that he or she is, and adjust your communication based on what is meaningful to the person today, no matter what stage of the disease process they're in. So in the early stage, or also called the mild stage, in this early stage, you may or may not see changes in the way the person communicates. For some people, there may be some shifts in their ease with words or with conversations, and for others, there won't be. But for some of the most common changes that you may notice in early stage are listed on this slide, and they can include difficulty finding the right words, taking longer to speak or respond, withdrawing from conversations, struggling with decision-making or problem-solving, reacting more emotionally than in the past, avoiding discussions of the disease and its impact. Whether you notice changes in the way the person speaks or not, communication in the early stage is very crucial. This is a period in which everyone involved is adjusting to the diagnosis and is having thoughts and feelings about the changes ahead of them. Remember that denial is a part of the disease for some, while for others, emotions can feel very overwhelming. Come to terms that the diagnosis and the emotions that you're feeling are, by talking about it, talk together and express your connection. This will help everyone accept the diagnosis, move forward, and discover new ways to live positive, fulfilling lives. Communicating throughout this process can also bring closeness that will help everyone adjust more easily as the disease progresses. One of the best ways to be sure you are offering the help with communication that the person needs in these early stages is to just ask them directly. Ask them if the person is struggling to find the right word, ask whether it feels better for you to supply the word or whether it feels better for you to just wait patiently. Sometimes they'll be able to get the word and it just takes time. So asking them directly in these early stages can really make a big difference. Keep your sentences direct and straightforward to help the person avoid feeling lost in conversation. Short sentences can make your meaning clear. Avoid long explanations and take your cue from the person, taking care not to talk down to him or her. It may take the person longer to find words or put thoughts together and express them. Be sure that you're allowing extra time in conversations so that no one feels pressured or rushed. Keep in mind that conversational needs will change over time, and in the early stage, the person with dementia needs to have his or her voice heard. You can help facilitate this when you meet the person right where he or she is today, regardless of the stage of the disease. It's very, just meeting them in their reality that can make a huge difference no matter what stage of the disease process you're in. Be sure to include the person in any conversation if he or she wishes, especially those that will have an effect on his or her future. Including the person can be empowering, engaging, and can allow his or her preferences to be respected. Other key points are, don't make assumptions about the person's ability to communicate because of an Alzheimer's or another dementia diagnosis. The disease affects each person differently. Every brain, every disease process is different. So don't make the assumptions. Speak directly to the person if you want to know how he or she is doing. Just ask them. Explore which method of communication is most comfortable for the person. It could be letters, it could be email, it could be phone calls, it could be in-person conversations, it could be text messages. It's okay to laugh. Sometimes humor lightens the mood and makes communication easier. Be honest and frank about your feelings. Don't pull away your friendship and support just because the person has dementia. Okay, communication in the middle stages. Many changes in the middle stage of Alzheimer's and other dementias affect communication. If you notice some of these changes in the early stages, they're likely to become more pronounced in the middle stage. Some of the changes you may notice are listed on this slide, and they can include increased difficulty finding the right words, using familiar words repeatedly, inventing new words to describe familiar things, like if you're looking at a watch, they might say hand clock, or, a salad dressing might be salad sauce or lettuce sauce, things like that. Easily losing their train of thought, speaking less often, they're more quiet than normal, communicating through behavior rather than words more often. Others might include difficulty organizing words logically, reverting to speaking in a native language, using curse words, relying on gestures instead of speaking, difficulty following a conversation or a TV program or a movie, difficulty decoding what others are saying. Changes in the brain make tracking and decoding words more difficult. For that reason, people begin to use behavior to communicate more often in the middle stages of the disease process. Next, we'll discuss the adjustments you can make that help you continue to connect with the person living with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. Please note that some physical conditions or medications can affect the person's ability to communicate as well. If a change occurs suddenly or dramatically, make sure you consult a doctor. There may be a medical issue that needs to be addressed right away. For example, that urinary tract infection that we talked about. When communicating with a person in the middle stages, approach the person gently. Identify yourself and approach the person from the front and at eye level. Again, if they're in a wheelchair, you might need to get down onto that level, or if they're sitting in a chair. If they're standing, you might want to stand up. So make sure you're at their eye level. Call the person by name and say who you are in relation to the person. For example, hi Dad, it's your daughter Sue. This will help to orient the person and get their attention. Sometimes using touch can show that you care, even when your words are just about a task or are not understood. A gentle touch on the shoulder or on the arm can also help get a person's attention. Don't criticize, correct, or impose your perspective. It will backfire most of the time. Pay attention to your facial expression and tone of voice. Be calm and patient. The person can feel either your tension or your patient understanding, so they really feed off of what energy you're giving off. Finally, remember to take the time to communicate. Give yourself and the person you're talking with enough time to respond, interact, and connect. And this may take longer than you think it should, but giving that space, that time to communicate in the middle stages can be really important. When you join the person's reality, you take a little time to see the world as he or she may be seeing it right at the moment. When seen from his or her perspective, the person's behavior can often become understandable to you. Due to the changes to the brain that accompany the disease, the person will probably not be able to see your perspective, so you will have to be the one who will need to use respect and empathy to see the world through his or her eyes. Joining the person's reality is key to helping the person have his or her say, and it provides soothing and reassurance. To do this, you can take the steps listed on the slide, which is reminiscent of what we talked about with the behaviors too. Listen to figure out what the person wants or needs. This means paying attention to both the words and the behavior of the person. Keep in mind that the person may be saying something about his or her feelings or needs, but may be feeling something else on a deeper level that also needs attention from you. For example, the words, "I can still drive just fine," may also contain the feeling, "I don't want to give up my independence, so don't take that away from me." The words, "Stop taking over my life, I hate it," may actually reflect the meaning, "I hate this disease and I don't understand why I can't do what I always could." Let the person know that you understand what he or she may be feeling and why, whether they are expressed through words, behaviors, or both. Often it will be a combination of both. Answer any questions or address any issue he or she may bring up. Be brief and to the point. Then, most importantly, respond to the emotions behind the behavior for the concern. For example, if the person is communicating with words, you might say, "You seem sad. Do you feel sad?" And then wait for the response. If the person says yes, then you might want to guess as to the cause. For example, "Do you miss the way things used to be?" If the person says yes, then, validate that. "Yeah, it's hard. I do too." If the person is communicating with behavior, see if you can identify and speak about the emotion behind the behavior. If the person is rummaging through possessions, it may be a way of communicating boredom or needing something. Hitting during baby, naked, or feeling out of control. Finally, only after you've responded to the emotions, reassure and redirect the person by encouraging him or her to do something that may shift the person's thinking and behavior. So to continue with the example, you could say something like, "I'm glad to be here with you today. Let's go for a walk outside." In this way, you are gradually moving the person from feeling sad to doing something active that can lift his or her spirits. Keep it slow and basic. Take your time and be patient when you communicate. The more you slow down, the less resistive you will encounter because the person won't feel so rushed and unable to keep pace. So just slow it down, be patient. Rushing leaves the person feeling frustrated, inadequate, upset with him or herself, and then resistant. By taking your time, you will avoid frustration for everyone. Use short sentences, basic words, and speak clearly, and be very specific. Sometimes it helps to offer the choice you think best at the end of a sentence. For example, rather than asking an open-ended, hey, what would you like for breakfast? You can say something like, it's breakfast time. Would you like eggs or would you like oatmeal? Give multiple cues. It's helpful to give the person many different cues as you communicate. This reinforces your words and clarifies your message. Provide visual cues and gestures, avoiding sudden movements. Use gentle gestures and pointing, but avoid making sudden gestures that might startle the person. So, if you want somebody to sit down, you might just do it gently, but if you do it suddenly, sometimes that can startle the person. Write things down for the person. Reminder notes, calendars, labels, lists, they can all remind the person of where things belong, what is to be done, or who is who in the person's life. Labeled photos can help the person keep track of names and relationships in the middle stage of the disease process. Offer answers in your questions. It is much easier for someone in the middle stage to choose what to eat for lunch, for example, if the question is not open-ended. What would you like for lunch, Bill? Is a question that may leave the person overwhelmed and stuck for an answer. Another example is, what do you want to wear? And it seems like easy things, but giving answers within the question. This can lead, the open-ended questions can lead to confusion, or in many cases, just refusal. But it's much easier for the person to answer the question if it's phrased more, Bill, I'm making sandwiches for lunch. Do you want ham or turkey? Or Carol, it's time to get dressed. Do you want to wear the blue dress or the t-shirt and jeans? The person can choose one or the other and will often choose the last option that's mentioned. So if he seems stuck, you can then suggest an answer like, how about ham? Or in the clothing example, how about the dress? Repeat information or questions. Although you may have many reminders in place, plan on needing to repeat information you provide or questions you ask. The person may not have been able to decode your message completely the first time, and repetition can help. Turn negatives into positives. For example, if you need to get the person into the shower and they always resist the task, rather than saying it's time for your shower, triggering that resistance, you can say, let's go get you cleaned up for the day so that you'll be ready for somebody's visit this afternoon. So sometimes it's just turning those negatives and rephrasing things. Avoid quizzing the person. Quizzing the person, asking him or her to try harder to remember, or saying that he or she knows the answer and asking the person to think again is unfair, and it just doesn't work. They probably don't know. They probably don't. Trying harder just leads to that frustration. It is much more respectful and helpful to give the person the information he or she needs for a task or situation, along with reminders as needed. Respond empathetically and reassure. Let the person know that you are there and that you're listening and that you hear his or her concerns. The facts are far less important than the person's feelings and his or her view of reality. These feelings and perspectives are very real to the person, even though they may not match your reality. It's their reality and it's very real to them. Responding to those feelings first can help avoid some of the resistance. Provide reassurance that you are together and that you're safe and that you are there to help. You're safe, I'm here to help. Let the person know that you hear and understand the thoughts and feelings that he or she is experiencing. As long as there is not a safety issue, agree and go with the flow, finding common ground whenever it's possible. Make any adjustments to the situation that are necessary, and then redirect the person to another activity if needed. Okay, we're going to move on to the late stage, also called severe. In the late stage, the person may only use a few words, but he or she still needs to connect and communicate. Since the person has lost many functions by the late stage, you may feel a strong urge to do something. Usually your presence and connection with the person are much more important than doing something specific for the person. Remember that the person is an adult, and they do have a sense of self, even in the late stages, and that continues throughout all the stages of the disease process. They are an adult and they do have a sense of self. You can connect with those aspects of the self by remembering the person's history and respecting his or her preferences. The goal is to help the person feel content and happy whenever possible. Keep talking using familiar words, names, phrases, poems, passages, songs, books. Whether you can get a direct response from the person or not, sometimes the sound of your voice just helps maintain the connection and gives the person connection with someone else. Using the 5 senses is a great way to connect with the person living with dementia in the late stage. So again, that's touch, sight, sound, smell, and taste. So those late stage, that sensory piece can be really effective in the late stages. Here are some ideas for connecting through touch. You can, feel different types of fabrics, identify shapes by touch, lotion with hand massages, identifying everyday items in a bag by touch, visiting with animals, molding non-toxic clay or dough, holding the person's hand, or stroking his or her arm or their back. This may be the most powerful way to connect non-verbally. And another thing would be like a sensory quilt, if you have that, or some of the weighted baby dolls or weighted blankets. Sometimes that can be helpful through touch as well. Some ways to connect through sight. Laminate brightly colored pictures to look at together, especially in the late stages. Those bright colors are going to make a big difference. Watch videos of animals, nature, travel, or things that the person used to enjoy. Look at photo albums together, and if it's labeled or people that you can point out, here's your mom, here's your dad, here's your daughter, as you're looking through it and talking through it. So then you're also connecting with the sound of your voice. View photos of famous paintings, favorite settings, or prominent people from the past. Watch birds or look at aquariums. Paint with watercolors. Go outdoors or sit by an open window together to experience the environment together, using many of the senses at once, feeling the sunshine, seeing people and pets that might be walking by, hearing nature sounds, feeling the breeze, or smelling, a coming rain shower or something that's in the air. And combining the senses is really great. Connect through sound. Using sounds and music are some of the most powerful ways to connect in the late stages. Listen to familiar music if you know what the person's favorite musical styles were. It may stir up some happy memories, such as, jazz or big band dance music or hymns or classical pieces or Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, whatever it is that the person used to love and listen to. Sometimes that can stir up some good things. You can also listen to recordings of sounds of nature, farms, cities, animals, or babies, depending on what that person's preferences are. You can identify musical instruments by sound. You can listen to songs or speech in the person's native language. So this is especially effective for someone who maybe was reverting back to their native language in the middle stages. Listen to things that are in their native language. Read book, poetry, scripture, or newspaper articles to the person, and let the person hear the gentle tone of your voice. Again, it's responding to the way that you are. So if you're talking gently, they're going to hear that you're talking gently. Connect through smell. The sense of smell is one of our most basic senses. Although this may diminish with age and disease progression, you can consider some of the ideas on the slide to connect with the person. You could make small plastic bags containing items for the person to smell under supervision, usually is a good idea. Things like herbs and spices, or cotton balls dipped in essential oils, grass clippings, or fragrant flowers, teas, coffee beans, things like that. Use fragrant lotions for hand massages. You may also want to have a variety of small fragrant candles that they can smell, and if they're strong enough, then you can smell them when they're unlit. Then you don't have to light the candle to smell them. Remember to use scents that the person will find familiar and pleasant. Be very mindful of any kind of allergies that the person may have, and avoid any scents that might aggravate the allergies. But if somebody has a favorite scent, if vanilla makes them think of baking in the kitchen, and they were an avid baker, then bring in a little vanilla and let them smell it. But just keep in mind that different people react differently to different kinds of scents. Connect with taste. Well into the late stage, people living with dementia enjoy tasting their favorite foods and flavors. Here are some ways you might provide some strong flavor sensations for the person. However, as the abilities to swallow also diminishes in the late stage, choking does become a hazard. So please be sure to provide to the person only what they can swallow safely. If someone's on a period diet, you don't want to give them something hard to eat. And that's just purely safety. But some of their favorite foods, if someone always loved chocolate, you can taste chocolate. Home-baked goods are always a favorite. Popsicles, flavored drinks, ice creams, puddings, things like that.
Hello, Doris?
Yes,
Hi. My name's Beth. I'm the nurse at Renee Curry's
If you could remember to be on mute, please.
Okay.
This abdominal pain is...
Thank you. All right, so to summarize, maximizing our communication or connectedness with a person living with dementia involves adhering to a few principles. Understand what is and isn't possible to change by understanding all that you can about the disease. Stay up to date with the latest information and scientific breakthroughs on Alzheimer's disease and other dementias by attending workshops or conferences. Know and accept the cognitive and functional limitations of the person to help you set realistic expectations of the person. Again, that's meeting them in their own reality. You adjust what you're doing, not the other way around. Remember that the person is an adult with a sense of self, and that should always, always be respected. Remember to use feelings to connect. You convey your mood through your actions and your tone of voice. The person is going to pick up and reflect on those feelings. Stay focused on your positive feelings for the person to increase your understanding of his or her reality. Demonstrate your caring to the person to help you connect. Listen, observe, and try to decode what the person is communicating about his or her needs and wants. By joining the person's reality, you can better understand what is needed and how to intervene. Communication evolves throughout the stages of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, and adapting to those changes requires commitment. By adjusting your communication as the disease progresses, you can learn to connect deeply and meaningfully, enhancing your relationship with the person living with dementia. So, the Alzheimer's Association does have a few resources, which some of you may know and some may not, so I'm just going to talk about them very briefly. One of the online tools that you'll find on the Alzheimer's Association website is the Alzheimer's Navigator. That can help map out a plan to approach Alzheimer's and other dementias, and you can visit the webpage. It's just alzheimersnavigator.org. Alzheimer's Navigator helps guide you to different answers by creating personalized action plans. It contains information, support, local resources, things like that. Another one is the Community Resource Finder, which is just communityresourcefinder.org. That's an online tool, and that helps, lets you see things that are specific to your local community within your area, things that are available to you. All's Connected is a supplement to local support programs. It's a lot of online message boards. There's over 50,000 members, and they share their thoughts, their questions, their ideas with each other. It's 24/7. So the other thing on here is the 24/7 helpline. This is something that is really helpful. There's licensed clinicians on the other end. It is every day of the year, day or night, anytime at all. If you need somebody or need to find resources or anything like that, that 24/7 helpline can be really beneficial. It's 800-272-3900. And there's also, the Alzheimer's Association has support groups, education programs, and more available in communities. It's nationwide, so you can just type in your zip code and see what's around. There's also free online education as well. If you ever wanted to get involved, there are several ways to get involved. There is the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is probably the most popular. There's also the Longest Day, which is my personal favorite. That's usually in June, and you can do essentially whatever you want to raise funds for the Alzheimer's Association. You can volunteer. You can be a community educator like I am, or you can volunteer in other ways. And there's also a program called Trial Match, and that helps connect people with different clinical studies that are occurring. I'd like to pause and see if there's any questions about anything that we talked about today. I know there weren't very many questions with the understanding and responding to dementia-related behaviors, but if anybody has questions, now is a great time to ask. I know the chat was being monitored for me, so if there's any in the chat.
Hi, Anne, it's Lisa. The first question we have is whether a copy of your PowerPoint will be made available. So I know
Yes.
I know Holly has a platform for that, as long as you're okay with sharing the slides.
Yes, I'll email my slides. That way everybody can have access to them.
Great, thank you. The next question, does the I think maybe it's the association, still provide a one-time grant for care of a person with dementia?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. but I can find out.
Okay. Or would one of those resources you shared be the right place to get that answer?
You could call the 24/7 helpline. They have access to anything that the Alzheimer's Association can provide. That helpline number, I think, is still up on the slide I have up. It's 800-272-3900. You could also go to the community resource finder. Sometimes that has things like that that would pop up.
Great. Yep, that's all the questions for now, unless someone has something else they'd like to ask you. Getting some positive feedback from your presentation.
I guess I left too much time for questions. And you can feel free, if you want to just unmute and ask me something, that's okay too.
Yeah, very positive feedback in the chat. I don't know if you can see that.
I can't see the chat right now. Unshare to see. I'm not sure how to see the chat right now with my screen sharing.
I can read them.
But thank you for everyone who's giving me positive feedback. I appreciate that.
This
I
was
appreciate
very
you all being here.
informative, and oh, it just moved again. This was very informative, and I feel I can better connect with a person with dementia with the tips provided. Thank you.
Good.
Great presentation. It was very good. Thank you, Anne. This was very thorough, so informative. Thanks for the valuable information. This was very helpful. Great presentation. And I couldn't agree more.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was very valuable to watch you go through those 4 steps, from a different perspective each time, to see how to apply those steps. Yeah, it was very good.
And I think that reassessing and making sure you're going back and looking at the 4 steps in a different way, that makes a big difference sometimes.
Yeah, it's very good. Right, well, we give it another minute or two. Other than that, I doubt many will complain about hitting lunch a couple minutes early. How long have you been helping with the Alzheimer's Association? Was it 7 years? Is that what I read?
I've been volunteering with the Alzheimer's Association for about 2 years, but I've worked in dementia care for basically my whole career.
Okay. Well, you can tell that you're passionate about it. You're getting a shout out from another E-Town alum.
Oh, yeah, E-Town.
I went to your rival school. I went to Messiah. So somebody's asking about how to get the CEUs for this program, and really all you need to do is complete that evaluation form. So the evaluation form should have been provided to you via email, but it's also available on the website that you use to get into the breakout sessions. So if you've gone directly to YouTube, it may be a little bit trickier, but if you choose to click on the Bucks County Community College Neff website, the evaluation is also posted there, and I believe that they're going to provide the link to that in the closing today as well. So once you complete that evaluation, that's how they can track who is doing what and process the continuing education credits. Okay, well, I guess that'll wrap it up for this session. Thank you so much, Anne. This is, as I said before, very valuable. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
I will just say, I thought the issue with the sound was that people were allowed to pop in and out. And then whenever somebody new popped in, it seemed that they were not muted. So I'm just going to mention that, give feedback, because you did a great job of handling it. And I think the information, I was still able to hear and follow what was going on. But I was frustrated, but I was also frustrated for you. So sorry about that. Um,
That's okay.
and, I'll surely mention that Lee and Damon to see if they can do something about that. Because even like being on here with you, I couldn't mute other people.
Hmm.
So I think it went well. Okay, I'm gonna hop off. Thanks, Anne. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions coming up, so I'm going to hop off too. Thank you very much, everyone.